The following contains spoilers for Neon Genesis Evangelion, the End of Evangelion, and the Evangelion manga, as well as The Sopranos and Star Trek The Next Generation. Quick note here, guys, I'm just going to warn you, this video is going to be pretty depressing. And not like nostalgia depressing like the Bionicle and the Liminal Spaces videos. If you're already going through it and you don't want to hear talk about existentialism and the purpose of our existence, or our possible lack of purpose of existence, I would recommend skipping this one. For those of you who have seen Evangelion, you probably have a pretty good idea where this is headed. Also, let me just say, this video may get demonetized for cartoon nudity and certain heavier themes, so if you'd like to see more of these videos, please consider supporting me by sending a super chat or donating to my Ko-fi, link in the description. Additionally, my 2 novels are available on Amazon. You can find the links at natjnelson.com. As always, if you're interested in reading this essay on your own time, you can download a PDF in the description with sources cited MLA style. In the autumn of 79 AD, the Italian stratovolcano Mount Vesuvius erupted into a cloud of molten rock and hot ash at a speed of 1.5 million tons per second, obliterating much of the nearby cities of Pompeii and Herculaneum. Thousands of unsuspecting Roman civilians were killed, buried beneath hot ash, or incinerated by a wave of gas. In the autumn of 2012 AD, the Museum of Science in Boston hosted an exhibit dedicated to Pompeii and the eruption of Mount Vesuvius, attended by, among many others, my family and myself. On display were actual skeletons, as well as the plaster molds of those who were preserved in ash. My siblings and I were old enough at the time that we weren't scared off by these ghoulish exhibits, but these rough gray bodies and loose approximations of the human face made us wonder, in a melancholic kind of way, who these people were. Roman citizens, obviously, and more specifically the residents of Pompeii who hadn't escaped the fury of the gods. But in a juvenile moment of sonder, it occurred to us that each of these humanoid statues represented a real-life person, no less a member of the species Homo sapiens than we enlightened beings of the 21st century. As a whole, these people made up a group invaluable to archaeology and anthropology, but separately, their names and personalities had been entirely lost to time. According to Ernest Hemingway, quote, "Every man has 2 deaths, when he is buried in the ground and the last time someone says his name." Hemingway goes on to claim that, quote, "In some ways, men can be immortal." This certainly rings true for individuals of the ancient world such as Socrates, Archimedes, and Jesus Christ, who remain household names several millennia after their deaths. But even these pillars of human culture may be forgotten one day, given an apocalyptic loss of history or a general progression to other areas of thought. After all, how many brilliant thinkers on par with Archimedes existed in the 296,000 years between the inception of the human race and our earliest recorded history? From a friendless John Doe buried in a public cemetery to Jesus himself, there is an upper limit to how long a human individual can be remembered. For the majority of us, this thought may be disheartening, but not devastating. Everything succumbs to entropy, from sapient to inanimate, and most of us find moderate to complete satisfaction in simply enjoying the short time we're given and living a virtuous life as a productive member of society. But is there objective value to living in the moment when no one will ever appreciate the fact that you lived in the moment? Does selflessness and helping others actually benefit anyone? Or are we each meant to callously hoard the currency that is time with the knowledge that in a few short generations, no one will know we even existed, let alone tried our best to help out our fellow man? At the end of the world, individual humans will not be remembered, no matter the significance of their life, nor the size of their headstone. But when the last human being draws their final breath, a new question will arise. Who will remember the human race? Have the now extinct masters of planet Earth been utterly erased from significance? What did the entire span of our existence amount to? One could pose the same question now. What is the existence of humanity meant for the universe? A common illustration of life on Earth sees the 4.5 billion years since the planet's formation condensed into a 24-hour clock. In this scenario, single-celled life forms before 4 a.m., while Homo sapiens don't evolve into 43 seconds after 11:58 p.m. A minute and 17 seconds before midnight, or roughly 300,000 years, a fraction of the Earth's existence. And yet in that time, humanity has significantly altered altered 97% of Earth's ecosystems and destroyed almost 90% of its wetlands. In the last 50 years, 94% of wildlife in Latin America has died out, and in 2019 it was estimated that 1 million different species were less than a decade away from total extinction. Climate change has reached such a climactic degree that July 3rd, 2023, just yesterday as of writing this, was recognized as the hottest day in recorded history. To use an entirely different analogous analog timepiece, the so-called doomsday clock now sits at 11:58 and 30 seconds, a minute and a half to total man-made destruction, ironically and poetically accomplished in the minute and a quarter that humans have existed. The pride of the human race is unmatched. But why shouldn't we be proud? After all, it seems painfully obvious that we were chosen as the masters of Earth, whether by nature or by some higher power. We are the smartest animals on the planet, the only ones capable of using tools, and the only ones who teach our young the knowledge accumulated by all prior generations. We're also the only species who tell stories, not only to recount past events, but also as fiction, stories invented for the purpose of entertainment. Accordingly, the species name Homo narrans has been suggested as an alternative to Homo sapiens, implying that it is our storytelling, not our intelligence, that makes us unique in the animal kingdom. To speak in terms of fiction, humanity is the undisputed main character of the universe. Not any individual human or group of humans, but the species, as a single entity. The weak anthropic principle tells us that the laws of physics are fine-tuned for the existence of carbon-based life forms, specifically humans, but only because without being so, we would not exist to observe the universe. The later participatory anthropic principle delves into quantum physics to imply that the universe, similar to Schrödinger's cat, could not exist unless we were there to observe it. To observe, in this case, means to question, to study, to explore science and philosophy, all observations that can only be made by beings of human-level intelligence or higher. The other 2.13 million species on our planet cannot observe the universe in the same scientific way. To put it simply, if a tree falls in a forest and there are no humans around to hear it, all animals present are essentially deaf. Assuming there is no intelligent life elsewhere in the cosmos, humanity lives a solipsistic existence. We are the master of the universe, for better or worse, and we are the protagonists of the story of existence. Like the final scene of The Sopranos when, according to the most common fan theory, Tony is shot and killed and the screen cuts to black. The events of the series were seen through his eyes, and the moment he is killed, the universe of The Sopranos ceases to exist. How will those around Tony react to his death? How will his crime family carry on without him? These questions are a moot point. Tony was the beginning and end of his universe, the way humanity, as a whole, is the alpha and omega of ours. The purpose of Tony's existence within his universe was as unknowable as any individual's, but the purpose he served for the audience was carrying his own universe, allowing it to exist. In the same way, we may be observed by higher beings elsewhere in the universe or even the multiverse, but if no such beings exist, then do we serve any purpose other than maintaining the universe through its quantum state? The most common non-religious answer to the question of our collective purpose would probably be an egalitarian standpoint about creating a better world for our progeny and furthering the human race. But when faced with the truth that none of the future humans who might benefit from our charity will recognize the effort, or even that we ever existed, the concept may seem less ideal. After all, how many of us would dedicate our lives to helping a modern individual who didn't know we existed? And we are expected to do the same for millions of individuals who couldn't care less, when our individual efforts likely wouldn't result in a single concrete change to the world? Even such selfish ideologies as wanting to enjoy our lives to the fullest without any regard for posterity may seem less attractive when one remembers that their momentary happiness will fade, and that in the blink of an eye they will be dead, without any of the naysayers even caring that they happen to take the self-serving path. Percy Shelley's haunting sonnet Ozymandias centers around a statue of the titular pharaoh known in Egypt as Ramses II. Although the base of the statue is inscribed with a quote from Ramses declaring his ability superior to the mightiest of lesser men, the statue itself has toppled over and crumbled in the sand, signifying that while Ramses is one of the few individuals who are remembered after 3 millennia, even his strength of character was no match for the destructive passage of time. And if Pharaoh Ramesses II means nothing to the average 21st century human, how little must we know or think about the average resident of his kingdom? How little will the average 24th century human know or care about us? The tragic struggle to acknowledge the individual within a group of billions is highlighted in The Inner Light, a Season 5 episode of Star Trek: The Next Generation. Foreseeing the end of their planet due to climate change, the people of Catan send a mental probe into deep space that roams for 1,000 years before latching onto Jean-Luc Picard, sending his mind back in time and forcing him to live several decades as a resident of Catan. Given this technology, Catan could have simply recorded an objective history into their probe to be acknowledged and appreciated by any possible intelligent extraterrestrials. Instead, they chose the individual over the collective and forced a man from a future planet to live among them, befriending the long-dead Catan natives and appreciating them as people. The people of Catan may not have technically been Homo sapiens, but they carried the spirit of Homo nerans beyond the grave. According to the participatory anthropic principle, humanity is integral to the existence of the universe itself, but Catan, like Earth, had no knowledge of alien species, and may have formed their own version of this theory. Within the world of Star Trek, there are hundreds of species with human-level intelligence who continue to observe the universe long after Catan is gone, proving that the universe was just as indifferent towards their existence as that of any lesser animal. If the same goes for Earth, if Homo sapiens are not in any way significant to the universe at large, then we return to the question of our purpose, our reason for soldiering on in this uncaring world, both as individuals and as a collective. The practice of viewing our species as a single entity is given physical form through the mythology of the anime series Neon Genesis Evangelion. To make an astonishingly complex body of lore somewhat simple, in the world of Evangelion, humanity was birthed from an extraterrestrial giant named Lilith, and was originally meant to exist as a single entity. Through a complicated bit of lore that I admit I don't fully understand, Lilith's offspring instead became the primordial soup of prehistoric Earth, which eventually birthed everything we know as life. Early in the show, it is seen that both the Evangelion, mechs, and angels, monstrous aliens, are equipped with invisible force shields known as the AT field. It is later revealed that all human beings, as the descendants of the angel Lilith, contain their own AT fields. Although they are too weak to block physical attacks, the humans' AT fields serve to bind their egos and individual personas, keeping all humans a certain emotional distance from one another. The loss of AT field serves as the catalyst for the antagonist's master plan. The shadow government known as Zila seek to unleash an apocalyptic event known as the Third Impact, which will bring about what they refer to as human instrumentality, closer to complementation in the original Japanese, the erasure of all AT fields and the merging of all life into a single entity, the primordial soup of prehistoric Earth, the original form of the human race as it was spawned from Lilith. This may come across as the standard world-ending evil scheme of an anime villain, but in truth, human instrumentality is far less black and white. The return to humanity's original form would end all conflict, all war, all suffering, all negative feelings in general. As Zila believes, humanity was never meant to exist in its current state, and it was the mistrust between individuals which led to war and destruction. The final form of the human race is not made explicit. Actually, I'm sure it's explained somewhere in the extended franchise, but the truth is, I'm not the most well-read on Evangelion lore. But the series and film finale seem to imply that the new collective organism will not be entirely sapient or emotional. It will merely exist, completely at peace with itself and the universe, no longer suffering, no longer hating, no longer failing to understand itself. This messy and depressing question of our individual purposes and our inability to be remembered for any of our accomplishments would cease to be relevant. We would all exist at once, all alive, all important, all equal in all things. No one would misunderstand or distrust one another. No one would be lonely or depressed ever again. In the End of Evangelion, the film serving as a finale to the original series, the human instrumentality project begins when Lilith is awakened, but the decision to continue merging humanity or revert them to their individual forms is left up to teenage protagonist Shinji Ikari. The idea that retaining individuality is preferable seems to go without saying. Individuality is, after all, a highly prized factor of human life in this day and age. But if the viewer is capable of empathizing with Shinji, the decision seems less apparent. For the entire series and the film's sequel, Shinji has been lonely, despondent, self-hating, and miserable. His mother died when he was young, his father abandoned him shortly after, he was ignored for the bulk of his childhood, and was only acknowledged when it became clear he was the best Evangelion pilot available, even after which he received little to no praise. Shinji is fundamentally incapable of connecting with other people. Ignoring the fictional AT field, this is a problem faced by millions of real-life individuals, primarily younger people who fall through the cracks of social interaction. Shinji wants nothing more than to understand other human beings, yet he finds himself unable to put in the necessary effort. Even those he could realistically call his friends, such as Misato, Asuka, and Toji, Shinji manages to push away through his own myopia and inability to open himself up. To someone like Shinji, who is borderline suicidal and hardly willing to raise a fist to save himself, let alone the rest of humanity, the chance to merge both physically and mentally with every other human being, to finally understand them in a way that even his socially outgoing peers never could, seems like the easy out he's been looking for. Instrumentality isn't suicide, and it isn't the death of humanity. It's a return to the natural state of life, a correction on the mistake that was individuality, the erasure of the defensive AT fields that kept even the closest of lovers at an arm's length. Never more will there be division. Never more will there be suspicion or fear of the other. Instrumentality ushers in a pure form of life with no hatred, no destruction, no depression, no loneliness. If Shinji allows the third impact to merge the entire human race, he will never be lonely again. No one will. But when the time comes for Shinji to make a decision, he hesitates. A reminder of his late mother figure prompts him to reject instrumentality, to realize that a lack of negative emotions implies a lack of positive emotions. The angels causing the third impact chide Shinji, reminding him that if the AT fields return, humans will once again be divided into individuals, and thus into larger groups that will fight and destroy each other in an endless cycle of fear and hatred. With Shinji's recognition that he has always been miserable, and his ambiguous claim that he, quote, wanted to see them one more time, instrumentality reverses, and the souls of humanity are allowed to return to their individual forms. Unfortunately for the characters in the world of Evangelion, the third impact was just as physical as it was metaphorical. When the film finally returns to a fully physical plane of existence, we see that the aborted instrumentality has permanently altered the world. The oceans have turned a deep red, the moon is stained with blood, and dead angels litter the landscape. The planet-sized body of Lilith, taking the form of a young girl, has died and physically fallen to Earth, her bisected face dominating the atmosphere. When Shinji and his fellow pilot Asuka awaken on a beach in this apocalyptic landscape, we see that Shinji's decision to embrace individuality did not amount to anything like a happy ending. His immediate reaction to their continued existence is to violently strangle Asuka, only letting up when she caresses his cheek. As Shinji collapses in hysterical sobs, Asuka calls him disgusting, and the film ends. The Neon Genesis Evangelion manga adaptation, which closely follows the plot of the original anime, veered extremely in this final scene. After instrumentality is aborted, we meet a version of Shinji in a world that is not only unaffected by the third impact, but apparently the prior second impact as well, as the planet's environment has returned to normal. While traces of the angels and Evangelion exist in this new world, no one seems to remember the events of the series. Whether Shinji does is left ambiguous, though the other protagonists have apparently forgotten him and their time together. While the impulse to give our protagonists a happy ending is sometimes a serious emotional struggle, the ending of the manga forsakes the message of the end of Evangelion. If the choice was between merging all of humanity and living in a peaceful and pleasant world among friends, there is no debate to be had. The Shinji of the End of Evangelion chose to raise the AT fields and saw the immediate consequences. Violent impulses stemming from a fundamental mistrust and misunderstanding of others, which resulted in him attempting to kill what may be the only other human left alive. In a vacuum, the end of the Evangelion manga is upbeat, while the ending of the End of Evangelion is so depressing that instrumentality would seem like the better option to even the most individually minded child of Lilith. But there is a spark of hope in that bleak world of red oceans and dead gods. A flashback reveals that Shinji's mother, whose soul is trapped within Evangelion Unit 1, plans to leave Earth and travel the cosmos, bearing the knowledge and history of the human race. Even if the world never recovers from the destruction of the third impact, Unit 1 will serve as a reminder to possible alien races, or just to itself via the anthropic principle, that there once was a such thing as the human race. As Shinji's mother explains, humanity can only live on this planet, but an Eva can live forever, along with the soul of whoever is implanted inside it. Even after 5 billion years, even after the Earth, Sun, and Moon are gone, it will still be here. Even if that person were the only one, it would be very lonely. But if that person survived, proof that humanity had once lived will remain forever. Literally speaking, as far as we know, EVA Unit 1 does not possess the ability to infer the memories of the human race onto another form of life, not like the probe sent into space by Catan. But this monstrous purple robot exists in the cosmos as a testament that there once was an intelligent race of people on the planet Earth who failed in their mission to remove all boundaries of hatred and suspicion from themselves. And even if every last human being dies in the wake of the third impact, the soul of Yui Ikari exists within Unit 1, the group known as humanity, the biggest group of intelligent, solipsistic, quantum physics-defining individuals to ever exist on the insignificant little blue-green world called Earth, has been ultimately reduced, not added, into a single soul. One final sentient testimony to the all-powerful, destructive, tragic, singular entity known as the human race. The concept of human instrumentality doesn't need to be a thing of fiction. Humanity can be seen as one singular organism, if not literally, as in Evangelion, then in our collective responsibility as the most intelligent species in the known universe, and the potential quantum protagonists of creation, on the off chance that we really are alone in the universe. We are one singular organism, but we are individuals as well, every human being a cell in the divided, yet collective body of the 18th angel. No cell is more important than another. Each individual has the same potential, regardless of life scenario, to change the world for the better, or for the worse. And though some cells grow cancerous and attempt to destroy our body from the inside, while others are willing to destroy the body as a side effect of their own selfish desires, there are others who selflessly choose to do what they can for the benefit of our species. The individual may not understand or trust their fellow individuals. They may not believe in anonymous acts of kindness, but we all believe in the power of the human race. We have been granted a glorious purpose, either by a higher power or by a mere roll of the dice. We observe the universe, and the universe exists by our observation. Humanity, as an organism, is the protagonist of this narrative, and on an instinctual level, humanity maintains the same prerogative as any organism, to ensure its own existence, to maintain the ecosystem in which we reside, and to provide for future generations, regardless of whether our individual cells are recorded in eternal history. But one can only hope. Humanity's destruction, not only of the planet, but of itself, has grown at an exponential rate. In the last minute and a quarter of our existence, we have risen from no chance of man-made apocalypse to an almost guarantee. We are barreling towards our demise, the end of not only the protagonists of the universe, but every other species as well. We didn't know it back then, 300,000 years ago, when Homo sapiens split off from Homo heidelbergensis. But by setting ourselves up as the dominant species, we were taking on the greatest burden conceivable. We were becoming the tragic hero of planet Earth, the Shinji Ikari of the known universe. But while the symbolic decision of Shinji Ikari could be made by an individual human, our ultimate fate is not so simple. The vast majority of us have no desire to take action, to dedicate our short time on Earth to providing for our progeny. To change our path as a collective would require not one individual mind, but 8 billion. And yet, to change our immediate future, to steer away from a man-made third impact, would require only a handful of individuals, those who hold all the wealth and power, to turn away from their callous disregard for their own collective body. It is these individuals, the ones who have almost single-handedly doomed our species, who will be remembered for the rest of our existence, remembered and cursed until the last human draws its breath. From an environmental standpoint, the best we can hope for is another species arising after we have destroyed ourselves. A new intelligent, storytelling species who will take command of the planet and respect its natural form, unburdened by self-destructive tendencies. From a selfish, anthropic point of view, the best we can hope for is a Yui Ikari or a Catan mind probe, a form of human technology, if not human spiritualism, that will allow our memory to live on long after our world has grown dim and lifeless. 117 billion humans have lived and died since the dawn of our species, and none will be remembered. But the true tragedy is not the loss of the individual, but the collective inability to seize our prerogative as the solipsistic main characters of the universe. Or maybe legacy is all that matters in a myopic worldview. Maybe human instrumentality is pure fiction, and our real-life AT fields will never be lowered. Maybe Ozymandias won in the end. After all, I'm talking about him now, and not about whichever one of his subjects dedicated their life to charity. Maybe slightly prolonging the amount of time that people who don't even exist yet are aware of our names is the closest thing to an individual purpose any of us will ever know. Or maybe it's time we stop wondering and just bite the bullet. We know we all have the potential to do actual good for the future of our species, provided we gain control over our AT fields. On the one hand, my name is Ozymandias, King of Kings. Look on my works, ye mighty, and despair. On the other hand, unless someone like you cares a whole awful lot, nothing is going to get better. It's not.